"She's your mother, Celeste, not mine." He said it from the top of the stairs, robe untied, coffee in his hand. My mother was 14 minutes away, alone in her house, 82 years old, and her left arm had gone numb. And my husband, the man who had eaten her Sunday pot roast every week for 13 years, was leaning against the doorframe telling me to figure it out. I figured it out. Not the ride, the marriage, the whole thing. In the time it took him to finish that sentence, I saw every year we'd been together for exactly what it was. And I decided, standing in that hallway at 7:46 on a Wednesday morning, that my mother would not be the only woman in this family who deserved better. My name is Celeste Morrow. I'm 51 years old, and this is the story of how my husband lost everything because he wouldn't lend me the car. I live in a 3-bedroom Cape Cod on Birchwood Lane in Hartford, Connecticut. The house has green shutters and a front porch where my mother used to sit every Sunday afternoon with a cup of tea and the crossword puzzle from the Hartford Courant. She could finish it in ink. She never used pencil. "If you're not sure enough to commit," she'd say, "you don't know enough yet." My mother, Dorothy Morrow, was a school librarian for 31 years at Parkville Elementary. She read to other people's children for 3 decades, and when she came home, she read to me. Every night until I was 12. When I told her I was too old for bedtime stories, she said, "You're never too old, you're just too proud. And pride is a terrible reason to stop being loved." That was my mother, love delivered with precision. I married Marcus Hale on April 3, 2013. He was a regional sales manager for a medical equipment company, Crestline Health. He was the kind of man who could sell anything to anyone and make them feel like they'd gotten a deal. Good smile, firm handshake, always wore a belt that matched his shoes. I thought I'd married someone solid. What I'd actually married was someone polished. There's a difference. Solid goes all the way through, polished is just the surface. For the first 8 years, Marcus was fine, not wonderful, not terrible. Fine, he showed up, he mowed the lawn. He took my mother to her doctor's appointments twice and mentioned it 4 times each. My mother would say, "That man keeps receipts." Not for taxes, for favors. He tracked everything he did for anyone as if kindness were a loan that needed to be repaid. My mother saw it. She never said a word about Marcus directly. But every Sunday dinner, when he'd make a comment about money, she'd look at me across the table with an expression I didn't understand until much later. The expression of a woman watching her daughter accept less than she deserved, and knowing she couldn't say so without losing her. The signs weren't dramatic. They were erosive, like water on stone. You don't notice until the shape has changed. Thanksgiving 2021. My mother hosted. She always hosted, 82 years old, and she still made the turkey, the stuffing, the sweet potato casserole with the marshmallows on top. That evening, after dinner, I was helping Mom wash dishes. Marcus walked into the kitchen and said, "Celeste, how much longer? The game's on and your mother doesn't have ESPN." Not "Thank you for dinner, Dorothy," not "Can I help clean up, how much longer?" Like my mother's kitchen was a waiting room. March 2022, my mother fell in her bathroom, bruised her hip. She called me at 6 a.m. I said, "Mom fell, I need to go check on her." He pulled the blanket up and said, "She's probably fine. Old people fall, that's what they do." Like she was a statistic. Like she was a category. Like 82 years of Dorothy Morrow could be reduced to a probability chart. I went alone. Mom was sitting on the bathroom floor in her nightgown, holding the edge of the tub. She'd been there for 40 minutes because she didn't want to bother anyone. I helped her up. Made her tea, sat with her until noon. Marcus didn't call once. September 2023, Mom's birthday. I asked Marcus if we could take her to Carmela's, her favorite Italian restaurant. He sighed. Actually sighed. "Can't we just bring her a cake? Carmela's is 40 minutes each way." I took her myself. We split a plate of chicken piccata, and she told me about the first book she ever read to a child at Parkville, Charlotte's Web. She said, "I've read it 400 times, and I still cry when Charlotte dies." Isn't that something? She laughed at herself. I watched her laugh, and I felt something crack inside my chest, not breaking, just shifting. The way a foundation shifts before you notice the walls are uneven. If you've ever been the one who always showed up, stay with me. My mother lived alone on Prospect Avenue in a house she and my father bought in 1978 for $34,000. My father, Edward Morrow, was a machinist at Pratt & Whitney for 26 years. He died on a Wednesday morning in November 2012, heart attack on the factory floor. He was 67. Mom handled it the way she handled everything, with her chin up and her hands busy. She sold one car to cover the funeral costs without telling me until it was done. She learned to manage the furnace, the gutters, and the property taxes. She kept the house running on a fixed income and Social Security, and she never once called me to say she was struggling. She kept a pot of soup on the stove every Sunday. Didn't matter if anyone was coming. "You never know who might need feeding," she'd say. Half the time, the soup went to Mr. and Mrs. Chen next door, or to Francine, the retired postal worker across the street. My mother fed the neighborhood out of a pot that cost her $8 in groceries and an afternoon of standing. She didn't call it charity. She called it Tuesday. She wore the same good blue coat to every appointment, every Sunday dinner, every hospital visit. A pea coat she'd bought at Filings in 1997. The lining was patched twice and the buttons replaced once, but she wore it like it was Chanel. Because my mother didn't dress for other people. She dressed for herself. That's the woman Marcus Hale called "not mine." Wednesday, January 14th, 2026, 7:42 a.m. I was standing in the kitchen watching the coffee drip when my phone buzzed on the counter. "Mom," I picked up on the second ring. "Mom." Celeste, her voice was thin. Not her usual voice. Dorothy Morrow didn't do thin. This woman had survived a husband's death, a recession, a hip replacement, and a leaking roof she fixed herself with YouTube tutorials at age 79. She didn't call for help. She called to check on other people. "Something feels funny, sweetheart." "My chest is tight and my left arm keeps going," she trailed off. "Mom, don't move, I'm coming." "I'm sure it's nothing. I don't want to make a fuss." "Mom, stop, sit down, I'm coming right now." I hung up. My car was at the mechanic. Marcus's Audi, black, fully loaded, sitting fat and gleaming in the driveway, had a full tank. He'd filled it up Monday. Marcus was upstairs. I could hear the shower running. That long, luxurious 25-minute shower he took every morning. I went to the bottom of the stairs. "Marcus." The shower kept running. "Marcus." The water stopped. "What?" "I need to borrow your car. Mom's having chest pains. Her left arm is going numb. I need to take her to St. Francis." Silence, not the kind where someone is thinking. The kind where someone has already decided and is choosing how to say it. He appeared at the top of the stairs, towel around his waist, face completely unreadable. Steam drifting behind him like a halo he didn't deserve. "Celeste, I can't today. I have the Davenport presentation at 10 and poker with the guys tonight. I'm not sitting in a hospital waiting room all day." Marcus, her left arm. "Call an ambulance." "She doesn't like ambulances, you know that." "After Dad." "Then call someone else." He was already turning back toward the bedroom. "Marcus." He stopped, turned halfway, and looked at me with an expression I will never forget for the rest of my life. Not concern, not guilt, inconvenience. "She's your mother, Celeste, not mine. Figure it out." He went back into the bedroom. The door didn't slam. That almost made it worse. A slam would have meant emotion. He just closed it gently. Like an 82-year-old woman's left arm going numb was a scheduling conflict he didn't have room for. I stood in that hallway for 5 seconds. Then I pulled out my phone. Francine Delacroix lived across the street from my mother on Prospect Avenue. Retired postal carrier. 69 years old. She drove a 10-year-old Subaru Outback that had seen better days but never missed a morning, just like its owner. She was the kind of woman who shoveled your sidewalk before you woke up and left a plate of cookies on your porch without a note because she didn't think kindness needed a signature. She and my mother had been friends for 23 years. She was at my father's funeral. "Front row," I called her. She picked up on the first ring. "Celeste, what's wrong, baby?" "Francine, Mom's having chest pains. My car's in the shop. Can you?" "I'm putting my shoes on right now. 3 minutes." That's it, no negotiation, no conditions. No poker nights to check. 3 minutes, I called Mom back. I'm coming, Mom. Francine's driving. You don't need to do anything. Just unlock the door and sit down. You hear me? Sit down. Celeste, I really don't want to make a fuss. Mom. Yes. Sit down. A small sound, almost a laugh. Okay, baby. Francine pulled up in 3 minutes and 12 seconds. I counted. The drive to St. Francis Hospital on Woodland Street took 9 minutes. Mom sat in the back with me, her small hand in both of mine, wearing her good blue coat like she was going somewhere important, because she was. She kept apologizing the whole way. I'm sorry to drag you out, Francine. It's nothing. Dorothy, hush. I was just watching the news anyway. Was it anything good? Nothing ever is. Mom laughed, actually laughed. And I looked out the window at the Hartford morning, bare trees, gray sky, the last of the ice on the sidewalks, and I felt two things at the exact same time. Gratitude for Francine, and something else, something cold and quiet. For Marcus, I didn't examine it yet. I just let it sit there. Sint. Francis was busy for a Wednesday morning. We checked in at the ER at 8:27 a.m. A nurse named Carol got Mom into a room within 15 minutes. The doctor on call was Dr. Nina Ackhaffer. Calm voice, deliberate hands, she didn't rush. Mrs. Morrow, I want to run an EKG and check your enzyme levels. The symptoms you're describing, we don't ignore those at your age. Mom looked at me, her eyes were asking if she should be scared. Do whatever she says, Mom. She nodded, then she reached up and touched my face. Her hand was cool and dry and light like holding a leaf. You came, she said. Simply, like she hadn't been completely sure I would. That nearly broke me. Not because it was sad. Because it meant that somewhere in her 82 years, my mother had learned to prepare for the possibility that the people she loved might not show up. And the fact that she'd felt she needed to prepare for that, that was the thing that cracked something open in my chest that would never fully close again. Mom, I'll always come. She patted my cheek twice, lay back on the pillow, closed her eyes. The blue coat was folded neatly over the chair. Marcus didn't text, not once, not even is she okay. At 11:04, Dr. Ackhaffer came out to find me. Ms. Morrow, your mother had what we call a mild cardiac event. Not a full heart attack, but her body was warning her. We want to keep her for observation, run a few more tests, adjust her medications. But she's stable. She's stable. She's also asking if there's a television in her room. I laughed, that's her. I went in to see her. She was propped up on 2 pillows, the hospital gown drowning her small frame, but her eyes were clear, sharp, the way they always were. Wesley from down the hall has been flirting with me, she said. He offered me half his Jell-O. Did you take it? Of course I took it. It was cherry. I held her hand. We watched a game show with the sound on. At 3:47 p.m., just before I left, she took my hand again. Celeste. Her voice had shifted. This was her other voice, the one she used when she meant something. Yeah, Mom. Marcus didn't come. It wasn't a question. I didn't answer right away. The silence in that room was thick enough to touch. He had work, Mom, and then plans tonight. Plans? Just the word. I looked at her, 82 years old, blue coat folded over the chair, eyes as clear as they'd ever been, and I saw something move across her face. Something that looked a lot like a decision. Not about Marcus, about me, about how much longer she was willing to watch her daughter make excuses for a man who wouldn't drive 15 minutes to check on the woman who raised her. I'm fine, baby, she said. Go home. Get some rest. She patted my cheek, the same way she'd patted it when I was 6 and scraped my knee. The same way she'd patted it at my father's funeral. The same gentle, certain touch that said, I love you, and I see more than you think I see. Francine drove me home. We rode in comfortable silence. Somewhere on Blue Hills Avenue, I realized I wasn't angry at Marcus. I was done. There's a difference. Anger runs hot. Done runs cold. Anger wants to scream. Done wants to plan. And somewhere between the hospital and Birchwood Lane, Dunn settled into my body like a key turning in a lock. Marcus wasn't home. Poker night. His Audi was gone from the driveway. The parking spot where it usually sat looked like a missing tooth, obvious and ugly once you noticed. I walked into the kitchen. His coffee mug from this morning was still on the counter. a ring of dried coffee underneath it. I picked it up, washed it, dried it, and put it back in the cabinet. Then I sat at the kitchen table and made a list, not an emotional list, a tactical one, the next morning. Thursday, 6:58 a.m., I woke up before the alarm. Marcus came downstairs at 7:30. Robe, yawning, poured himself a cup and leaned against the counter. "How's your mom?" Not Dorothy, not Mom, your mom, like she was a task on his to-do list he was checking off. "Stable," I said, "mild cardiac event. They're keeping her for observation." "See, I told you she'd be fine." He said it with the confidence of a man who had done nothing and was taking credit for the outcome. I watched him scroll. The man I had shared a bed with for 13 years, who had eaten my mother's pot roast every Sunday, who had let her hem his pants and press his shirts, who had called her Mom at our wedding and never again after. This man was standing in my kitchen, treating my mother's cardiac event like a weather report that hadn't affected his commute. I called an attorney at 9:15 a.m. "Diane Mercado, Family Law, Hartford. Diane, I need to discuss a divorce." "What's changed?" "My mother had a heart attack yesterday. My husband wouldn't lend me the car to take her to the hospital. He said she's not his problem. Then he went to poker." Silence. 2 seconds. "Come in at noon. Bring your tax returns, bank statements, and any documents related to shared property." Over the next 2 weeks, while my mother recovered at St. Francis and then at a rehabilitation center on Albany Avenue, I built my case the way my mother built her Sunday soups, ingredient by ingredient, patiently, without rushing. He had been moving money quietly for years. $1,500 here, $2,200 there, for 4 years. While I was packing school lunches and driving my mother to appointments, my husband was building an exit fund. $94,000. In his name only. What he didn't know, and this is the part that changes everything, my mother had already protected everything. Her house on Prospect Avenue, bought in 1978 for $34,000, was now worth $310,000. In 2019, she had placed it in a trust, the Dorothy Morrow Living Trust. Sole beneficiary, me. My mother had also given me power of attorney over her finances in 2020. Her savings totaled $87,000. Every dollar accounted for, every receipt saved in shoeboxes in her closet, organized by year. Marcus never once asked about my mother's finances. He never asked about the house. He never asked about the trust. Because in his mind, a retired school librarian living alone in a paid-off Cape Cod was worth exactly as much as the dinner he didn't want to drive 40 minutes for. He looked at my mother and saw an old woman in a blue coat. He never saw the foundation she'd built underneath us both. February 1st, Mom was released from rehab. Strong, stable, and sharper than the day she went in. She'd reorganized the nurse's book cart and started a crossword club with 3 other patients. When the charge nurse said goodbye, she said, "Dorothy, please don't leave. You're the only one who keeps the night shift sane." I brought her home, not to Prospect Avenue, to Birchwood Lane, to our house. To the guest room I'd spent the weekend preparing: new sheets, her favorite quilt from home, a stack of books from Parkville's used book sale, and a small pot of African violets on the windowsill because she'd always said purple was the only color that looked right in winter. Marcus came home at 6:30 p.m., gym bag over one shoulder. He saw Mom's blue coat on the hook by the door, her shoes by the mat, the sound of her small television playing in the guest room. He set the gym bag down, walked into the kitchen where I was making dinner. His face was controlled, not angry, not confused, calculating. "What's going on?" "Mom's out of rehab. She's staying with us while she recovers." "For how long?" "As long as she needs." "Celeste, we didn't discuss this." "You didn't discuss the $94,000 in your personal brokerage account either, Marcus. But here we are." The kitchen went very quiet. The pot on the stove bubbled. The refrigerator hummed. The neighbor's dog barked once, sharp and short, then silence. His jaw tightened. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about 4 years of transfers from our joint account to a Fidelity account in your name. $1,500 here, $2,200 there. $94,000 total." while I was driving my mother to doctor's appointments in a car with 180,000 miles on it, and you were filling up your Audi every Monday. He sat down slowly. His hands went flat on the counter. I'm also talking about January 14th, I said. Wednesday, 7:42 a.m., my mother called. Her chest was tight. Her left arm was going numb. She was 82 years old and she was alone and she was scared. Dorothy Morrow, who hasn't been scared of anything since 1978, was scared, and you stood at the top of the stairs and said, "She's your mother, not mine. Figure it out." Celeste. I'm not finished. My voice was level, not loud, not shaking. Level the way a table is level, solid, even, built to hold weight. You went to poker that night, Marcus. While your mother-in-law was in a hospital bed with wires on her chest, you were sitting at Ray's kitchen table betting on cards. You didn't text. You didn't call. You didn't ask. He was staring at the counter. His hands were still flat. His thumbs were pressing into the marble hard enough to drain the blood from under his nails. I've filed for divorce, I said. Diane Mercado is handling it. You'll receive the papers this week. The house is a marital asset. We'll settle that in mediation. Your $94,000 account has been flagged as dissipated marital funds, and Mom stays in the guest room for as long as she wants. He looked up. You can't just. I can, I did, and here's the part you really won't like. I set my hands on the counter, mirrored his position. Looked him dead in the eyes. My mother's house on Prospect Avenue is worth $310,000. It's been in a trust since 2019. My name, not yours, never yours. My mother also has $87,000 in savings, and I have power of attorney. You spent 13 years thinking I was the woman who made $61,000 a year. You never once asked what my mother built, because you never once thought she was worth asking about. The silence lasted 9 seconds. I counted. The woman you called, not mine, built a financial safety net for your wife that's worth more than your hidden brokerage account. She did it on a librarian's salary. She did it while you were at poker. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. For the first time in 13 years, the man who always had an answer, the salesman, the closer, the man who could sell anything to anyone, had nothing to sell. Because there was no deal to make. There was only the math. And the math said Dorothy Morrow in her blue coat and her patched-up kitchen and her $8 pot of soup had outbuilt him. I turned back to the stove, stirred the soup. My mother's recipe, chicken, carrots, celery, thyme. Dinner's at 7, I said. If you want to eat, sit down. If you don't, the door's right there. He didn't eat, he left. The dominoes fell in order, every single one. Marcus Hale received the divorce papers on February 4th. He contested initially. His attorney withdrew the contest in 11 days when Diane submitted the forensic accounting report documenting the $94,000 in siphon funds. The court classified the hidden brokerage account as dissipation of marital assets. Marcus was ordered to return the full amount to the marital estate for equitable division. His attorney argued it was personal savings. The judge asked if he'd informed his wife. Silence. Then it's dissipation, the judge said. 3 syllables. Case closed. The house on Birchwood Lane was sold. I didn't want it. 13 years of memories, and every single one of them had his fingerprints on it. The kitchen where he told me to figure it out. The staircase where he stood in his towel. The driveway where his Audi sat full while my mother's arm went numb. I let it go the way you let go of something that was never really yours, with relief. Marcus moved into an apartment in East Hartford, a 1-bedroom near the highway. The kind of place where you can hear the trucks at night and the walls are thin enough to remind you that other people exist. He's still in medical equipment sales, but Crestline downsized his territory last quarter. Smaller region, smaller commission, smaller life. His poker group stopped inviting him in March. Ray told a mutual friend that Marcus brought the energy down. Imagine that, the man who chose poker over his mother-in-law's heart attack became too much of a downer for poker. I bought a 2-bedroom cottage on Prospect Avenue, 3 doors down from my mother's house. Close enough to walk. Close enough to bring her soup. close enough to sit on her porch on Sunday afternoons with tea and the crossword puzzle and the sound of Francine's wind chimes carrying across the street. Mom still lives alone. She insisted. I am not an invalid, Celeste. I had a mild cardiac event. The drama in this family. She got new medications, a cardiologist she likes, Dr. Ackhaffer, stayed on as her physician, and a walking routine she follows religiously. Every morning at 7:30, she walks to the end of Prospect Avenue and back, rain or shine, blue coat on. She waves at Francine on the way out. Francine waves back with a coffee mug in her hand. They've been doing that for 23 years. Some bonds don't need contracts or poker nights or Audi Q5s. They just need showing up. Marcus called me 38 times in the first week after I filed. I didn't pick up once. Not because I was angry, because I'd already said everything I needed to say, and my mother taught me that silence is a complete sentence. He left voicemails. I listened to the first 3. Celeste, let's talk about this. Celeste, I think we're overreacting. Celeste, I never said I didn't care about your mother. I deleted the rest without listening. 12 years of Dorothy Morrow's Sunday pot roast, and in his best attempt to save his marriage, he still couldn't bring himself to say her name. Last Sunday, I went to Mom's house for dinner. She made the pot roast, the good one, with the carrots that fall apart and the gravy she thickens with a roux she learned from her mother. The kitchen smelled like thyme and butter and Sunday. She was wearing her blue coat over her shoulders, not because she was cold, but because she was Dorothy Morrow, and Dorothy Morrow dressed for the people she loved. We sat at her kitchen table, the same table where she'd sat with my father for 34 years, the same table where she'd done crossword puzzles in ink, the same table where she'd told me I was never too old for bedtime stories. The evening light came through the window, warm and golden, and for a moment I could see my father in the empty chair across from her. Not a ghost, a shape, the outline of a man who would have driven her to the hospital at 7:42 on a Wednesday morning without being asked. Because that's what love looks like. It looks like showing up without being asked. Francine stopped by with a plate of cookies. No note, she never left notes. She just knocked, set the plate on the counter, kissed my mother on the forehead, and left. 3 minutes. No negotiation. Mom poured me a second cup of tea. She looked at me across the table, the same look she'd given me all those Sundays when Marcus made his comments, and she said nothing. But this time the look was different. This time it wasn't watching. It was resting. The expression of a woman who no longer had to worry about her daughter because her daughter had finally figured it out. Mom, I said. Yes, baby. Thank you for the trust, for the house, for all of it. She waved her hand. The way she always did when someone thanked her for something she considered obvious. I'm your mother, she said. That's what mothers do. She said it simply, the way she said everything, like it cost nothing, like it was easy. But I knew from the shoeboxes of receipts, from the double shifts she never mentioned, from the car she sold without telling me, from the trust she built in silence, that none of it was easy. All of it was love, measured in decades, counted in pennies, delivered without keeping score. My mother is 82 years old. She weighs 118 pounds. She can finish a crossword puzzle in ink. And she built a wall around her daughter that a man with a $142,000 salary and an Audi Q5 couldn't see, couldn't climb, and couldn't survive. Some women don't wait for someone to save them. They save themselves. They save their daughters. They do it with a blue coat, a pot of soup, and a trust document filed in a lawyer's office on a Tuesday afternoon while no one was watching. And when their daughters finally understand, when they sit at the kitchen table with the evening light and the pot roast and the second cup of tea, the mother doesn't say, I told you so. She says, that's what mothers do. I did, Mom. I figured it out. He had a car, I had a mother. That's why I won. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and join our community for more true life stories. We'll see you in the next one.